are the Jews of Belgium today?
Well, more or less the same that before the war. It means mostly from Poland. Mostly from Poland.
So they came back after the war?
They came, no, even before the war.
Inquisition.
No, there are not so many. There were some in Antwerp, but mostly they came in the 20s, and only 50% were killed. Only 50%, which is not so bad compared to Poland. So they stay there. So 50%. It means around 30,000 people. Half in Antwerp and half in Brussels. And it's two different planets, Antwerp and Brussels. It's like, I think, Melbourne and Sydney.
Toronto and Montreal.
Toronto and Montreal.
You have a number of starting Jews.
Of course.
Starting Jews who came
Definitely.
in the early 60s or late 60s.
Not so many compared to France. Yes, of course. You've got Lebanese,
because France, you
Moroccans.
had all of the Algerian
Exactly.
community.
But still we have an Ashkenazi traditional secular in Brussels.
What you're describing here is emergent anti-Zionism. It seems to be more of a projection of a deeper internal geopolitical crisis that seems to be manifesting itself within the borders of Belgium. We started off with two conflicts, and because of immigration and population, of course we haven't mentioned the German minority also, which is transplanted in a certain, they're really on the edge of Flanders. So
No, Wallonia. It's a part of Wallonia, the Flanders, the German minority.
Yes.
What was it? Verviers?
Verviers. The member of the Wallonia region.
It's in okay. We see the new transplantation of a Muslim population which had not existed initially, which is gaining force. I would call this really a recipe for balkanization, if you will. We're having enclaves emerging. It does not seem very violent initially, but if we look back to the Balkans themselves, they look quite peaceful about 30, 40 years ago as well. Is there any possibility that this anti-Zionist trend is just how do you say, a precursor of deeper and a more intense nationalistic and racially motivated sentiments that will propagate themselves in the future that have nothing to do with the Jews?
No, yes, you're right and wrong. You're right. Of course. No, you're right and wrong. It's true. That is, I try to say. It's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon which is, and actually, that's why I divided, my paper into the 4 factors which concern directly the Jew and 3 factors which doesn't concern the Jew, and especially the trouble that exists between Walloons and Flemish people, and of course the trouble of people who were not used to have so many foreigners. It's true, and so they don't know how to deal with it. But I don't think there is a risk of balkanization. I think that, well, roughly speaking, there are 2 models of nation. You have the Eastern model of nation, ethno-nationalism, which exists in Flanders, and in Wallonia you've got more the Civic model of nation. And I think, and we live under the Civic, and so I believe that in the long term, I don't think there was a risk of balkanization. The risk is, as I said, but it's not nice to be, in a sense, recorded. I believe personally that we live like in the last moment of the Roman Empire. It means there will be a kind of fusion, like it used to be. The Romans and the barbarians. It's not that I didn't say they are barbarians, but there will be migration, and there will be a mixture. And as long as there will be a majority in Brussels, by definition, Belgium will have to redefine itself by integrating, a part of the Muslim, I would say, not culture, but in a sense, preoccupation, something like this. Even if there is a secularization. So this is my opinion. So no balkanization, but a kind of new society.
Ethnicization.
Yes, in a sense. Transformation of the society, for sure. I don't think we could stay like this as, a white Catholic society. I think it's too late. It cannot. And for instance, the problem we had, here I've seen your program when Tremblay, a mayor in Saint-Denis, he wants to pray, before, in Belgium would be unbelievable, one of your mayor, there is a prayer when he starts.
He wants to maintain it.
He wants to maintain it. Belgium will be since the century. And for instance, we had the trouble of our Christmas tree. And maybe in 20 years, you know, Christmas tree will be something impossible to imagine because of this new fragmentation. So this is what I believe. So it's not pessimistic, optimistic, it's a new reality that we have to face.
A new reality in which everyone will be olive skinned.
Yeah, it's like this. Yeah. So there will be a part of regression, I believe. Well, the right of women, etc. And you see, for instance, the question of the theory, and even I saw it in the United States, you know, the trouble with theory of evolution, Darwinism. We had a lot of Turkish propaganda, you know, trying to impose new agenda in our public school in Belgium. So we have to resist, if it's possible.
So,
I think
Sorry.
Les nouveaux, les enfants de cette génération, les enfants des couples métissés aussi, est-ce qu'ils se comportent comme les parents, les grands-parents musulmans? Moi j'ai quitté la Belgique il y a 25 ans, mais les nouvelles générations,
But
les immigrés...
it's a good question too, you know. There was, you know, people dare not to confront the question because we are afraid of results. So there are very few Gallup opinion poll made, but there was one year ago, made by a Flemish professor of the VUB, the equivalent of my university, the Flemish one, Echaldus, and he made a little opinion poll in school, you know, on the youngsters of youngsters in Flemish schools, and the result was that 50% of the les écoliers, how would you say, 50% of the pupils from Muslim origin were Antisemite, 50%, and it was, of course, criticized because it was not politically correct. Because theoretically, you know, according to the Marxist theory, you know, poor people are not racist, only rich people are racist. So it was, of course, he was accused and he has to defend himself. But the results are there. It means 50%. And you know, also you have to understand that it's not an immigration like it used to be. You know, it's huge immigration. For instance, in certain neighborhood, 80% of the population will be from Moroccan origin, for instance, especially, for instance, in Molenbeek. So they live, in a sense, together, and they're listening to the radio, to the television channel, etc. So they'll cut from the rest of the population. So, and this is the case in Brussels, only in Brussels. Brussels is a special case. But I suppose in 4 generations it will be different. Let's be optimistic. Because modernity, and I think will come through the female liberation, for sure. I believe so.
So you mean you're speaking Londonistán and you're speaking Bruxellistan? No, I mean,
don't be so, no.
Because
no,
it
I don't think
seems
so.
from what you said that the Belgian people are integrating into the Muslim population rather than the
No, it's
opposite.
not true. They are cohabitating. No, it's not true. Don't misquote me. No, definitely not. It's not.
Well,
But they are,
majority of
they
the
are looking at
population.
each other, you know. And we have to also to accept the idea that, for instance, there are a lot of Moroccan politicians, as I said. And so they are, we can speak about integration. They are integrated. There is an integration. And so there will be a kind of mixity. This is what I try to say. Not Bruxellistan. A new kind of Brussels. Mixed. I'm not a priest or
I want
Exactly.
to ask you a question about the term you use to designate anti-Zionism in Europe now, or in Belgium at least. You call it a civic religion.
What does that mean?
But at the same time, you are saying that there's a very strong element of pragmatism at stake. So I think there's a tension between these two things.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think there's a tension between.
No, because I would say it's a common denominator, more or less, like this.
Well,
this is in this sense.
Okay, but would you?
Because
I don't want to quibble about
everyone in for instance, I work, as I said, in the Brussels Parliament, okay? There are many conflicts in the world, many conflicts. Congo, and you got now, so many women are raped in Congo, against Syria, 40,000 minimum people killed, whatever. You know, you will find Chechnya, etc. Morocco, you know, with the Sahara, you know. And the only, I would say, resolution that my parliament made was against Israel. The only, how to say, not treaty, how to say, convention.
Condemnation?
No. There was a kind of
Agreement?
convention between Israel, economical convention between Israel and Brussels region. The other one which was broke was the one with Israel. No one will ever think about criticizing the link we have with Syria or with Egypt or with Tunisia. Actually, I come back from Tunisia 3 weeks ago. In this sense. So it's pragmatic, but it's convenient. Like, in a sense, Holocaust education was convenient. People believe that by teaching Holocaust or the Shoah, racism will disappear. So it was also a kind of civic religion, whether you believe it or not. It's a tool. And what I say, anti-Zionism is a tool of integration. Because, Arabs are, in a sense, some of them happy that, their parliament break off relations with Israel. I think they're happy. It's a good step, to say we are concerned with Palestine. Look, we break the relation with Israel. So it's pragmatic and it's civic religion.
But okay, what I would say is this: I'm bothered by the term religion because of what it supposes. Civic religion, of what it supposes in terms of organized belief system, of organized institutional arrangements, and so on. I think there's definitely a dogma that is being established, a consensus, ideological consensus that's growing. And what is interesting in your talk is exactly the pragmatic underpinnings of that, rather than the ideological ones. Although they are present also, it's a mixture.
Because it's based on, and I will show you if you don't mind. But there is a credo. Religion is and there is a credo. Palestine is right, Israel is wrong. They have prophets. You have many intellectuals who are prophets and will speak or share against. They have pilgrimage. If you want, to go on television, you go to Palestine. And there is this kind of a religion. And if you want, I can stress.
Okay, so that's what I'm challenging you to do. That it
I have to go back to my paper.
Okay.
Because in my paper, I really use, I describe it as a religion.
That is exactly what I was.
No, really religion.
But it's not propaganda.
There are the propaganda too. If for instance, there was this war. There was this war against, between Gaza and between the Hamas. And I wouldn't say between the Palestinian and the Israeli, because it's a war against Hamas. And, in the press, no one speaks about the rockets. It was like Israeli started the conflict, and that the Israeli are baby killers. It's the only, I would say, conflicts when they will speak about the number of children killed. Like it could be, and if you want, okay.
But I appreciate the elements of transference, for instance, that you identified in the Jewish baby killer.
Exactly, for instance. And it dates back from the Middle Age.
Just to pick up what Raphael was saying, it's interesting that you said that anti-Zionism is a form of integration.
Yeah.
And this is where I think I agree with you. It's a form of religion. Integration used to be strong citizenship, healthcare, education, the rights of workers, the rights of migrants. And as the state withdraws and does not provide these services any longer, we integrate by ideology, and I would say religion is an appropriate term. That the state is withdrawing, and it's more of a crisis in the Middle East with the rise of radical Islam and the Brotherhood taking over, but it's happening in the West as well. And so I agree with you, and I think it's a structural, also.
You were too?
Yeah. So, but I think there's like sort of a structural, the neoliberal globalization is playing a role in these forms of identities and ideologies. What I find fascinating, so I thought your presentation was excellent. I'm looking forward to reading the paper. Just be a second. We're having this profound global crisis of anti-Semitism, of failed states, the rise of radical Islam. There's a revolution happening, and our intellectuals, as you say, are missing in action. The media is missing in action. And when people like you come with serious analysis of this crisis of anti-Semitism, I'm struck by two things. Our reluctance to take it seriously. We sit here and say, it can't really be happening, you must be right-wing, you must be reactionary, you're conservative, all the epithets that are thrown at us. And yet, there's a revolution happening and we're asleep. So so why do you feel that there's sort of this denial? And I just finished writing an article where I looked at how anti-Semitism changes, and at the moment of anti-Semitism, contemporary anti-Semitism has never really been accepted. During the 20s and 30s and 40s, when the universities got rid of the Jewish people, then that was contemporary anti-Semitism. There was no effective response to it. We lost. And I think if you go back, anti-Semitism, once it's unleashed, is a very powerful disease. So how do we, as intellectuals, now that some of us are establishing this reality which is terrifying, and yet there's this inability to accept it. So, do you have any ideas what to do?
We accept it, I think. The trouble is not we as some intellectual who work on this question. The trouble is how to reach, I would say, the intellectual, the journalists, etc. That's why we publish books, that's why we try to organize seminars, but it's quite difficult to be understood.
Do you have any ideas on this?
No. Some books, I published some books on cartoon, etc. And for instance, I will organize in 2 weeks within, the task force. Canada will check task force next year. So within task force, I propose to organize, an exhibition on anti-Semitism. There is no books on Belgian anti-Semitism. And it will be the first exhibition on this. And I started from Van Eyck, and I will show you, and I will start with anti-Zionism. So this is my response, intellectual response. So my response is not to demonstrate that people are anti-Semite, but sometimes that they speak like anti-Semite, which is different. Because the trouble is, since Hitler, no one is anti-Semite, and anti-Semitism has been never so high. So that's really the trouble. I show you, let me, please, if you don't mind. So for instance, when I try to say the difference between